Witam Państwa serdecznie, Błażej Hrabkowicz, to jest festiwal EnergaCAMERIMAGE w Toruniu, and our guest is cinematographer Ron Garcia. Hello, Ron.
Ron García ASC.
Ron Garcia ASC, of course. We have to acknowledge our friends at American Society of Cinematographers.
Otherwise, they'll...
Yeah, they will actually come in here
They'll
and
come in
just
here and
cancel this interview in a second. Good call. Nice to meet you, Ron. And from my point of view, it's especially nice to meet you because you are responsible for some of my favorite things in your career. You shot Twin Peaks pilot with David Lynch, and you also shot Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me with David Lynch. I'm a huge Twin Peaks fan. So, shooting the Twin Peaks pilot, you actually sort of established a visual style of the series with David Lynch. So, tell me about that project and what was it like working with David Lynch in creating the world of Twin Peaks?
That's a good question, and it was a collaboration that I think that both of us that I felt different working, that he thought I was different to work with, and I thought he was different, not in a bad way or a good way, but just different. And after being interviewed with him to do the pilot, I started little by little learning how we were going to collaborate, because when my agent sent me the script and said, you should take a meeting with David Lynch, I read the script and I threw it in the trash.
You didn't like it? The script for the pilot?
The script to the pilot. And I said, I don't want to do this. And I had just finished a pretty big series with Michael Mann called Crime Story. So I was feeling a little, I'm getting somewhere. Yeah. And I read the
feeling good about yourself.
But when I read the script, it wasn't any different than a regular TV show, the way it was, the script I got anyway. And I told the agent, I said, I really don't want to do this. He said, take the meeting. So I said, okay. So I took the meeting and David changed my mind.
Good agent advice.
A good agent advice.
Yeah.
And because of who David was, I don't know if anybody remembers Jimmy Stewart, the actor.
Great actor.
He kind of talked like Jimmy Stewart. And to me, in his demeanor, he reminded me of a scoutmaster. I was in Boy Scouts when I was a kid and stuff. But he never explained the pilot. It was an interview between the two of us of who we were to each other. That's the first time I felt that when I was being interviewed by a director, there was something about him that changed my mind, just of what he was asking. And he was very simple with me. He basically, as I was saying, I just came off of a series called with Michael Mann. Very colorful, very fast. Someone asked me years later, what was the difference between working with Michael Mann and David Lynch? And I said that basically Michael Mann is like being on a bullet train in Japan. And David Lynch is like being on a very still lake in a canoe. So that was the difference. And when we were interviewing, I had some footage from the Michael Mann show, and it was all very colorful, and in the 50s and 70s, and all he did was look at me and say, well, Ron, do you have anything warm? I went, warm? He says, yeah, do you have anything warm? Because most of my stuff was blue and magenta and the colors of the time at that time.
Cold colors, yeah.
And the color palette. And I went, well, I had just finished a movie of the week back that we called them in television. And it was about the above ground testing of nuclear above ground testing in the 50s after the war. And what happened, that they made soldiers be in a trench, get out of the trench and walk through ground zero right after an atomic bomb explosion 1 mile away. So all these soldiers, they kept doing it, and all these soldiers wound up with cancer and all that stuff.
Sure, from the radiation.
So it was the color palette that I used there was warm. So I excused myself. I forgot if it was the same day or the next day. I came back and handed him my tape of the dailies. And he said, oh, okay, that's warm. And he hired me.
Well, who would have thought that you would be hired by David Lynch based on movie of the week for making a pilot for a show that completely revolutionized, television?
Nobody, including David.
Including David Lynch, yeah. But aside from David Lynch, you also mentioned Michael Mann, of course. You work with him also on LA Takedown, which is kind of the previous version of Heat, what yes. later became Heat. This is an interesting director because you said about working with him, it was like a bullet train. But in my view, Michael Mann was and is one of the most aesthetically gifted directors, that he really, really wants his films and his TV series to look in a certain way. So that must have been for a cinematographer also one of the reasons of working with Michael Mann.
I think they're both artists in a different way. And all of Michael Mann's films, I shot LA Takedown, which was he practicing doing Heat.
Yes, of course.
Obviously. And was just two different approaches. And Michael Mann, I believed after before I interviewed with him, and we were doing Crime Story somewhere in some paper, some Hollywood Reporter somewhere. Michael Mann was very confident. He said, as Michael Mann talking, he said, I think I changed the look of television.
That's confident, yeah. That is confident.
That's really confident. And I went, okay. But David did it in a quieter way. And they both did it. They're both equal, saying whatever they want to say because it was true.
Yeah.
And I think both the second year of Crime Story and David's show put me on the map, basically, because they were different. They both had different kinds of imaging, and they both had different ways of doing that. Crime Story was more about the art and the production design. Michael Mann actually left me alone. When I interviewed with him, it was 5 minutes long in a restaurant, and he was taking takeout to his family for that night. From his office or something, and he just said, I like your work, I like your reel, I want you to shoot my series, the second year, and I want you there tomorrow. And he stands up and he turns around as second thought, and he said, Ron, I don't want you to hand me a mundane image. I want you to think out of the box, experiment, and if you fail, we'll just reshoot it. And that was about it.
That was a great thing for a cinematographer to hear from the director.
It's a cinematographer's dream.
Yeah, of course.
And I saw him 4 times in a year. And he didn't even come to say hi to me. He was busy with the art direction and in his inimitable way and stuff. Just hands-on everything but me. He left me carte blanche. And I guess I was doing something right because he never said, I want you to change this. He just left me alone. It was a dream.
Yeah. I want to ask you one more question, one last question about the project you worked on, One from the Heart by Francis Ford Coppola. This is, of course, the film which basically bankrupted Coppola. We all know the story. And it was really described in the history of cinema as being a disaster, like commercially, critically. But what was your experience working on the film? Did you feel that something is not right, or was it still an interesting creative process that maybe didn't end so well?
That's a good question. I think basically I was hired as a standby cameraman in the union so Vittorio Storaro could work in Hollywood.
Sure.
And I had met Storaro with Robert Towne, who was doing a test for Tarzan at the time. And that's when I got introduced to Storaro. And he and I hit it off because we somehow were both at the same time studying the psychology of color. So then he asked me to be his standby for pickups on Reds, Warren Beatty's Reds. And the union was giving them problems. Francis was arguing not only with Columbia, the distributor of One from the Heart, but the union. The unions were kind of tight and very powerful, and I wasn't a really good soldier in the union. So. But to get back to your question, being a fly on the wall, watching 3 masters, Francis Ford Coppola, Dean Tavoularis, the production designer, and Vittorio Storaro.
Legends.
It was my master's degree. I took copious notes, watched everything Storaro did. Storaro was very gracious. Why Storaro wanted me on that film was to put a crew together that were actually going to help him, because some of the crews in those days were, oh, you're a foreign cameraman? Let's see your stuff. Or those attitudes. I think that's everywhere. Everybody has that once you get established, I think. But they were really cruel to Francis, and they were demanding things union-wise. And to tell you the truth, I had my union card, but I hadn't, after I got I was an independent filmmaker to teach myself cinematography. And I was struggling, and I got this opportunity through a producer friend of mine to be on Town Show, be on Warren Beatty's show as a standby cameraman. Storaro and I hit it out, and Storaro wanted me to put together a crew for him. Gaffer, grips, camera, and all of the people I knew were incredible human beings, period. Just people that you want to take home and meet your family and that kind of stuff. And Storaro really appreciated it. So that was the real reason I got on the show, because he trusted me to bring in someone who wasn't going to have an attitude toward him.
Sure.
Because he had 3 Academy Awards by that time.
Yeah, of course.
And so that when I watched those 3 amazing artists, as I say, was my master's degree, is that Francis, I was standing there one time with his first assistant director, And he and I were shooting the breeze, waiting for something. And he was telling his first AD, he said, there's only 2 times in my life I've been broke. And today's one of them. Because
He knew.
he bought that studio. It was his own money. He was arguing with everybody, but he was an artist and he wanted what he wanted and he was taking his time and he was behind. But he said, I'm out of money. And that next day, the lawyer came down to talk to gathered us all on the stage and said, we're out of money and we're going to have to shut down the show. And I forgot, I think it was my gaffer, my friend who I had worked with, incredible human being, said, so let's get back to work. And we all went back to work for about 2 or 3 weeks.
Wow.
Until they found some money and stuff. Wow. So just the way they interworked with each other, and Francis's first cut, his whole idea was, it was seamless. There was a movie called Rope. And there was only 11, I think the reels were 11 reels at the time, and there were only 11 cuts in the whole film on a stage. And that was Francis's idea. And basically one of the reasons I was hired, because Storaro knew me and he'd seen some of my humble work, was that Francis had an idea that on one of the stages, because he was in this Silver Bullet and he was way ahead of the game in electronics. He had a video feedback. He had shot the storyboard with the actors' voices. Then he laid out the stage with no furniture, rehearsed him on that, and he had a video camera crew shoot that, cut it together. And so he would sit in his Silver Bullet, a trailer we called a Silver Bullet, and he had everybody design the system to where for instance, he was going to do the first scene of the real actors on the real set. Before he yelled action to the people on the set ready to go, he rolled in the videotape edit of the storyboard with their voiceovers.
Wow.
And then them on the stage. And then he would go, action.
Yeah.
He was never on the stage. Because he told us, he goes, I'm in that because when I'm on the set, everybody's looking at me. He was so sensitive that it was like, I've directed for 10 years and I was always going, the crew's going, man, he got the chops and all those attitudes. And it bothered him a lot, even the power that he had. Yeah. And he wanted he had this idea that if he's away, he could really see what he envisioned.
Yeah, the big picture. Yeah.
The big picture and the editing. And when we finally finished everything in the real live action, the real set, I saw a 3/4-inch tape of the movie, and it was brilliant. It was seamless. It was more seamless than Rope. The camera would go into a black trunk or something into blackness, and then it would cut to somebody walking from the back end. But this was done theatrically in the transitions between stage, and it was fantastic. And to answer your question, what happened was somehow he started listening to another editor. He had a good editor, but something tweaked him, and he just didn't feel that it was working. And we all thought, you got to be kidding! It's incredible. But some editor that he started talking to, he hired her, and she said, we got to go back in and do close-ups, and we got to do this and normal filmmaking.
I understand. Conventional, yeah.
Conventional, yes, thank you.
And he listened to her.
And he listened, and he went through 4 editors. And that's what ruined the show.
Oh, that's a shame. But thank you, Ron, for talking to us.
Okay.